The internet is full of polls ranking the worst Star Trek episodes, and there is one episode that is guaranteed to appear on those lists. The Star Trek Voyager episode, Threshold.
The present, the past, they're both in the future. The future is in the past.
I beg your pardon.
That scene encapsulates everything that went wrong with Threshold, and how and why the potential of this episode completely fell apart in execution. And in this video, we're going to dissect exactly what was intended with Threshold and why it failed so spectacularly.
I'm not sure which one is the captain.
The female, obviously.
I don't know how I'm going to enter this into the log.
The first thing to consider is what the original intention of the story was. The most common explanation for Threshold is that it's Star Trek doing Cronenberg-style body horror, specifically The Fly. A scientific frontier is broken, teleportation in The Fly, the Warp-10 barrier in Star Trek. After apparent success, the bodies of the two pioneers start to slowly fall apart. That reading can be found on Star Trek forums all over the internet, and writer Brannon Braga has himself acknowledged Cronenberg's influence on the episode. On the surface, the case seems closed. Star Trek tried to do The Fly, but couldn't realise the horror as effectively as the movie could, and not wanting to kill off Tom Paris, reset everything at the end. But there's a problem with that theory. It's inconceivable that Voyager's executive producers, Rick Berman, Michael Piller, or Jerry Taylor, would have greenlit that at the idea stage. It wasn't on brand for Star Trek at that time, and the executives would have known that Star Trek could never have realised the horror effectively, given that the show was regularly broadcasting at 4 PM in some markets. So how did Star Trek end up trying to recreate The Fly? How did Threshold end up resembling something it should never have been allowed to be? How did one of Star Trek's most infamous episodes ever come into existence in the first place? Although the final teleplay for Threshold was written by Brannon Braga, the original story was pitched by Michael DeLuca, a freelance writer with an established career in television and film. We don't know what the actual pitch was, and short of breaking into the archives at Paramount, we probably never will, but we can infer that it almost certainly wasn't Star Trek Does the Fly. So instead of guessing intent, the only honest approach is to work backwards from what Star Trek actually allowed the episode to be about. From the finished episode, we can see that the first third is about the breaking of the Warp-10 barrier.
Warp-10!
Yes!
To see why that's significant, we need to pause and look at what Warp-10 actually meant in Star Trek. It wasn't just a technical detail, it was a fundamental boundary the franchise had built itself around. Back in 1986, Gene Roddenberry, Dorothy Fontana, and David Gerrold were putting together the TV series which would become Star Trek The Next Generation. The new production team deliberately tightened the 24th century's internal rules. A formal series writer's guide known as the Series Bible defined the show as science fiction rather than fantasy, and created consistent rules for how the fictional science and technology was to operate. This wasn't just about tidiness, it was about preventing the universe from drifting arbitrarily between episodes. For example, in the original series, the 9th episode filmed, Balance of Terror, has the Enterprise firing phasers.
Energize main phasers, Mr. Stiles.
But the phasers operate more like projectile torpedoes than classic laser weapons. Roddenberry and his senior collaborators wanted to ensure that the technology of the 24th century behaved consistently from the outset. And one thing they were concerned about was drifting warp factors.
Warp 2. Engage.
An easy way for writers to signal danger or urgency is through speed.
Hostile now at warp 9.8, sir.
Our velocity is only 9.5, sir.
Projection, sir. We may be able to match hostiles 9.8, sir. But at extreme risk.
Prepare for emergency sources, Seb.
Early on, enemy ships might chase the Enterprise at warp 8, When the next threat needs to feel even more dangerous, the number creeps higher. Give it 4 or 5 seasons, and enemy ships are travelling at warp 25 as standard. This wasn't just an arbitrary nitpick by the creators. Star Trek already had a track record of signalling threat by showing enemy vessels as large.
Reading goes off my scale, Captain. Must be a mile in diameter.
5,000 meters away and it still fills the screen.
Showing physically larger enemy vessels has a limit. You still need to be able to see the Enterprise on screen for it to be effective.
82 AUs in diameter. Must be something incredible inside there generating it.
Warp speed doesn't have that constraint. A writer can easily choose a higher number. It needed constraining. The solution was to design a warp scale that wasn't linear. In the next generation, Warp 6 isn't simply 6 times Warp 1. Each step up the scale represents a much larger jump than the last. The closer you get to Warp 10, the more extreme each tiny increase becomes.
That's our ship. That's Voyager. Intrepid class. Sustainable cruise velocity of warp factor 9.975.
By design, the scale approaches a hard limit, but never reaches it. Warp 10 was to be that limit.
Captain, we're passing Warp 10.
Early first season anomalies aside, Warp 10 quickly became a hard, non-negotiable limit within the franchise. But in keeping with the spirit of grounding the show's science in realism, there needed to be a justification for Warp 10 being a maximum speed. The answer they found was that as your warp speed increases, you obviously travel a greater distance in less time. Warp 10 was to be so fast that the distance you would travel would be the equivalent of crossing the entire universe. Obviously, that's the largest distance that can exist, and you would cross it in so little time that you'd effectively occupy the entire universe all at once.
Nothing in the universe can go warp 10. It's a theoretical impossibility. In principle, if you were ever to reach warp 10, you'd be traveling at infinite velocity.
Infinite velocity? Got it. So that means very fast.
It means that you would occupy every point in the universe simultaneously.
Looking at Threshold, the first third of the episode is about hitting Warp 10. And having hit Warp 10, Tom Paris subsequently starts talking as if he experienced being everywhere all at once.
I could see the outside of the shuttle. I could see Voyager. I could see inside Voyager. I could see inside this room. For a moment, I was everywhere. I mean, everywhere, Captain. With the Kazon, back home, with the Klingons, other galaxies, it was all there. I don't know how else to explain it.
Well, I'm glad you had a good time.
We started by asking what the original pitch Michael DeLuca brought to Voyager actually was. Working backwards from what the episode repeatedly returns to, we can now infer its most likely form. Not Star Trek does the fly, and not even simply what if you hit Warp 10, but a more classically Star Trek question. What would it be like for a human mind and body to experience being everywhere in the universe at once?
It would appear that the theory of infinite velocity is correct. It may be possible to occupy every point in the universe simultaneously.
Threshold was to be a story about a person who touches infinity, and an experience like that would change someone. Threshold was to be a transcendence story. Paris experiences the entire universe all at once, and it changes him.
For a moment, I was everywhere.
Are you saying Lieutenant Paris is evolving?
That's my theory. Somehow, traveling at infinite velocity accelerated the natural human evolutionary process by millions of years.
And on paper, that's a fantastic sci-fi premise. It's Arthur C. Clarke territory. So why does it become this?
I am more. I'm everything.
According to executive producer Jerry Taylor, the ending was never meant to be the kind of transcendence Star Trek audiences would expect.
Who has summoned me?
Transcendence into beings who are visibly advanced, with greater intellect and reassuringly humanoid in their appearance, clearly recognizable as a step above us.
What does God need with a starship?
Threshold was meant to do the opposite. The idea was that Paris might genuinely have evolved into something better adapted to experience beyond human limits, even if from the outside it looked simpler, unimpressive, or even primitive. Not because it was lesser, but because it no longer needed to look intelligent in a way that humans would recognise.
I could see the outside of the shuttle. I could see Voyager. I could see inside Voyager. What I'm becoming will probably be better than who I was.
It's possible that Mr. Paris represents a future stage in human development.
But all of this remains abstract. Paris is describing his experience. Other characters are describing the subsequent changes taking place. Brannon Braga has said that he struggled to find the drama in Threshold, and it's easy to see why. The episode couldn't be dramatised solely through characters talking about change. Television needs to show us visible change. It needs escalation from scene to scene, and that leaves the episode with one practical option. Threshold makes the on-screen transformation physical and lets the drama come from watching Paris's body change and watching the crew react. This is where the episode turns into body horror. And the body horror doesn't sit easily alongside the transcendence idea. Instead, it overwhelms it. From this point on, everything the episode shows us tells a different story to the one it is still trying to tell in the dialogue. Paris talks about becoming something better, while the camera shows him losing basic human function, and he talks about metaphysical ideas after his tongue has fallen out.
What do you understand?
The present, the past, they're both in the future. The future is in the past.
I beg your pardon.
Listen to me. I am more. I'm everything.
The Doctor and the crew describe evolution.
Are you saying Lieutenant Paris is evolving?
While the episode stages his condition as a medical emergency.
His cellular membranes are deteriorating. He's dying.
These ideas can't coexist in the same episode. We respond to the body horror we see, rather than the evolutionary story we're told. The story stops being about transcending to a higher form of being and becomes about a body falling apart.
It's all so clear now.
And once that happens, the Transcendence dialogue no longer sounds profound. It sounds disconnected from what the episode is actually showing us.
What do you understand?
The present, the past, they're both in the future. The future is in the past.
I beg your pardon.
Listen to me. I am more. I'm everything.
Forced to choose, viewers believe their own eyes over what they are told. On screen, Paris is not ascending, he's deteriorating.
Please.
The primary question of the episode is no longer, what is Paris becoming? It has quietly shifted to, how do we stop this before it gets worse?
Please.
Something tells me we'd better hurry.
Paris no longer sees himself as being helped, but as being restrained. So he runs. He kidnaps Janeway, escapes in the shuttle, and once again travels at warp 10. When the crew finally find them, they are no longer people grappling with transformation. When the story was about transcendence, the twist was that we got something other than what we expect transcendent beings to look like. Once transcendence was no longer the story, it was no longer a twist, just a weird ending.
I don't know how I'm going to enter this into the log. I look forward to reading it.
Threshold was to be the episode which asked, what would happen if a human was able to experience the whole universe all at once? Its answer was, you turn into a salamander, you mate with your captain, and after spending the entire episode failing to stop it, the Doctor reverses it anyway. The episode never explains why the mating happens, it simply shows it. The most we can infer is that it's there to signal completion, that this transformation has reached a final stable form, one capable of reproduction. But that meaning is never earned on the screen. It's implied because the episode needs an ending, not because the story has arrived at one. But Star Trek had already told stories about transcendent godlike beings many times before, often very successfully. Why did Threshold fail, given Star Trek's track record? Typically in episodes featuring godlike beings, those beings are not the subject of the story. Instead, they exist to change what's happening in the story. Sometimes they put an end to dangerous situations.
You always stop me when I'm having fun.
You're disobedient and cruel. We've told you before.
Time to come in now, Trelane.
Other times they complicate or escalate a situation the crew is already dealing with.
We are the Metrons. We will resolve your conflict in the way most suited to your limited mentalities.
Even Star Trek V is not really about God. It's about the journey to find God and what the journey reveals about the crew.
I don't want my pain taken away. I need my pain.
And most Q stories are not about Q's nature or inner life. They are about the situations he creates.
We'll just have to see how ready you are.
Q!
Looking at Star Trek's track record up to that point, the nearest it had come to exploring how godlike beings might experience reality differently was in the Deep Space Nine pilot Emissary. The Prophets experienced time in a non-linear form.
What comes before now is no different than what is now.
Then for you, there is no linear time.
And the episode forces Sisko to try and explain linear time to the Prophets.
My species lives in one point in time. And once we move beyond that point, it becomes the past.
But crucially, Emissary is not primarily about the nature of the Prophets. Their non-linear existence is there to expose the fact that Sisko himself is emotionally stuck in the moment of his wife's death. Sisko is emotionally in the equivalent of non-linear time.
So you choose to exist here. It is not linear.
No. It's not linear.
The Prophets in Emissary exist to force Sisko's emotional breakthrough. They make things happen in the story, but their existence is only a component of the episode, not the main focus. Star Trek The Next Generation had told a story about human transcendence only a few years earlier. In the episode The Nth Degree, Barclay is struck by an alien probe, which massively amplifies his intelligence and cognitive abilities.
I couldn't even guess at your IQ level now.
Probably somewhere between 1200 and 1450.
But even here, the story is not really about transcendence itself. Barclay's intelligence explodes, but the drama comes from the disruption that causes to his relationships.
You've changed.
I've found confidence. I never knew it was there.
To the chain of command.
What are you doing?
Lieutenant Barclay to Captain Picard. You can fire photon torpedoes, maximum yield, full spread.
And to his sense of self.
I've finally become the person I've always wanted to be. Do we have to ask why?
The episode never asks us to inhabit godhood. It asks us to observe the changes and wonder where they are headed. And crucially at the end, the Cytherians who initiated Barclay's transformation do exactly what Star Trek's godlike beings usually do.
The Cytherians have reintegrated me, sir.
Cytherians?
They enable the reset of Barclay and resolve the entire plot neatly at the end. And back in 1966, Star Trek started out with a transcendence into a godlike being storyline, but it explored not what it's like to be a god, but how Gary Mitchell is corrupted by power.
You fools do not squash you like insects!
And how Kirk is forced to choose between personal loyalty and command responsibility.
If you mean Strand Mitchell there, I won't do it.
But the most striking comparison comes from Voyager itself. If you take the second season of Voyager and reorder the episodes from transmission order into production order, you notice something remarkable. The episode Death Wish was written and filmed just 2 episodes before Threshold, and it explores precisely the same core idea as Threshold. Death Wish centers on a godlike being, a member of the Q Continuum who has been imprisoned by his own people to prevent him from committing suicide. He applies for asylum aboard Voyager.
I am officially asking you, Captain, to grant me asylum and give me protection from my enemies, which is him.
Will you send him to prison for eternity? Or will you assist in his suicide plan? That's a toughie, but then again, that's why they made you captain, isn't it? To handle the real tough ones.
The episode finds its drama through the courtroom structure. It debates a clear ethical dilemma and even keeps the story entertaining with Q's theatrics.
I call myself to the stand. Ta-da!
Crucially, Death Wish also finds a way to make its abstract ideas understandable in a way that can be visualized.
We must show this hearing what life is like in the continuum.
And how do you intend to do that?
By going to the continuum itself.
This is a manifestation of the continuum that we hope falls within your level of comprehension.
But most importantly, the Q character wants to die because he has nothing left to discover. As an immortal being, he has been everywhere and done everything.
I traveled the road many times, sat on the porch, played the games, been the dog, everything. I was even the scarecrow for a while.
Why?
Because I hadn't done it.
And Death Wish's conclusion is devastating for Threshold. Once you have actually experienced everything, there's nothing waiting on the other side.
Captain, you're an explorer. What if you had nothing left to explore?
And that is the answer Threshold never confronts. Death Wish understands that having been everywhere and experienced everything is not the beginning of a higher state. In narrative terms, that is an ending. Threshold tried to be about a man experiencing everything, but couldn't find drama there. Perhaps because there wasn't any to find. Once everything has been seen, done, and understood, there is no higher state waiting beyond it, only stasis. Once you've experienced everything, there's no more story left.